All right. Good evening, everybody. We're at the top of the hour and we will begin in just a moment. My name is Leif Skogberg. We have a few of us kind of co-hosting this event tonight. Um, we have Stephen, Maria, and Josh. Oh, hey, there we are.
Hello.
And I just wanted to ask one more time if you can try and pull up that chat box and make that accessible or visible for you. If you're on a phone, you're probably not going to be able to do that. But if since you're all going to be muted, if you can bring up that chat box if you want to ask a question or participate in the conversation, that will make you be able to do that. Josh, you want to take it away, or Maria, whichever, whoever?
Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for making time tonight to join us today. We're welcoming right now our Wayne Environmental Commissioner and a commissioner part of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection of New Jersey, Mr. Stephen and Mr. Leif Scover. Today, who is going to be introducing our speakers is our Wayne Commissioner, Mr. Joshua Morris. Mr. Joshua Morris is an environmental professional and civic leader based in Wayne, New Jersey. He currently serves as the secretary of the Wayne Environmental Commission, where he has been an active member for the past 3 years. In this role, he contributes to local environmental planning efforts, provides guidance and sustainability initiatives, and works to protect the township's natural resources through community engagement and policy recommendations.
Oh,
Josh
hi. I'm here.
holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology from William Patterson University with more.
Maria, you got muted on accident. There you go.
Okay. And he specializes in environmental investigation, site remediation, and due diligence projects, primarily throughout New Jersey. His professional expertise includes conducting environmental site assessments, navigating regulatory compliance, and supporting responsible redevelopment initiatives. Through both his professional work and public service, Josh demonstrates a strong commitment to environmental stewardship, sustainable land use, and the long-term health of New Jersey communities. Today, I am so glad to welcome this great seminar series, Community Sustainability. It starts with you as part of the New Jersey Academy of Science and as part of the Wayne Environmental Commission. Please, Josh, introduce our speakers today.
Thank you, Maria. And thanks to the New Jersey Academy of Science for helping to make this possible. Again, I'm Josh Morris, Wayne Environmental Commission. I'm excited to host this webinar on community sustainability, the first in a number of events that are going to be hosted by the Wayne Environmental Commission, along with the New Jersey Academy of Science and other partners. I encourage everyone to visit our page on our webpage on the Wayne Township website to see our list of webinars and events currently scheduled, and to contact us should you want to get more involved. Tonight we have Stephen Holman, environmental specialist in an NJDEP Sustainability Innovation Program. Stephen has a degree in sustainability science from Keene and is working towards a master in environmental science at Stockton. Our other speaker is Leif Skogberg, chair of the Wayne Environmental Commission. He is formally trained in environmental horticultural science and environmental biology, and he has over 20 years experience with various aspects of sustainability. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function and we will answer them at the end. Stephen, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much. I'll start sharing my screen. All right, everybody can see this? Cool. All right, so like Josh was saying, my name is Stephen Holman. I'm an environmental specialist for the Department of Environmental Protection for the state. I work in the Bureau of Sustainability, and specifically in the Sustainability Innovation Program. So I work a lot on different sustainability stuff. I've been there for a little bit now. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about community sustainability. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, like Josh and Leif had said earlier. And I'll make sure to get to them as we go about the day. So to start off, wanted to get into what sustainability is. So when we talk about sustainability, it's important to kind of figure out what we're talking about because a lot of people use different definitions for sustainability. Sometimes we're talking about like finance, sometimes we're talking about the environment. So today we're going to specifically speak on environmental sustainability. So when discussing sustainability, we are talking about practicing things that will meet the needs of our current population without undermining the needs of future populations. So what does that mean in totality? We're looking at things like making sure that when we use resources like water, green spaces, food, all these kind of things that are natural resources to us, energy, we want to make sure that we are using them in a manner that meets the needs of people today, so they meet the needs of everybody in our communities, but they aren't depleted for people in the future, right? So we don't want to use all of our water in the next 20 years because that means that our kids and our kids' kids won't have access to that, right? So we are doing things in this way to not only protect ourselves, but also protect our futures. So when we are talking about what makes an action sustainable or how can we define that kind of sustainability aspect of things, we usually talk about 3 different pillars. And those pillars in sustainability are people, profit, and planet, or the earth, the economy, and equity. So those 3 pillars touch on making sure that everything that we are doing meets the needs of people and our society as a whole, so human health, and like the needs of our communities, whether that be access to like food, access to roads, access to clean water, and then our profit as well. We can't do actions that are not sustainable in an economic fashion. So we need to make sure that the things that we are doing are pertaining to the economic needs of our communities, right? We don't want to do things that are too expensive, but we also don't want to do things that won't bring in enough revenue, right? And then for the planet as well, we're looking at things that will be beneficial to the environment as a whole, right? We don't want to do things that are going to degrade our water sources, our soils, our foods, and our air, all that kind of stuff, right? So bringing all that together to then talk about our sustainable communities, we're looking at things in our communities that will make them more sustainable, right? Meet the needs of our current community members, but also meeting the needs of people in the future. So by designing communities that are sustainable, we're going to look for things that allow us to create spaces that are healthy for us today and are going to be healthy for us in the future. They're going to reduce like human-made climate change determinants, human-made ecological impacts like negative effects, things of that nature, and also provide us with like stable economic opportunities, right? So we're going to get into all that stuff in a little bit in more detail. So some of the benefits that we're going to be talking about from seeing things in sustainable communities is improved air quality, right? So in certain areas, like overburden communities, places where they might have like high industrial rates, a lot of them have increased air quality issues because of like the over industrialization or the over like development in those areas, right? So you're releasing more air quality impairment, you're releasing more CO2, methane, noxious gases, all that kind of stuff into the atmosphere. So by creating sustainable communities that don't do those types of things, we are eliminating those air quality like impairments. Same thing for water quality. So we want to make sure that we're not dumping chemicals into the waters, right? New Jersey has some of the worst Superfund sites in the entire country. So a lot of those chemicals that were leaching the ground are also leaching into the water system, right? That creates water quality issues. So we have less access to water. We can't go into like places where we used to go swimming at maybe because they're impaired now, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing things like preventing pollution from entering our waterways, preventing pollution at the source, right? We don't want to be doing things that are creating pollution in the first place because all this stuff kind of goes to our water. So in a sustainable community, you are negating these facts. You're preventing them from happening. You're protecting your water quality. And another thing kind of in that kind of idea of making sure we have the necessities that we need is that sustainable communities also provide necessities and safety for residents, right? So in certain areas in New Jersey, like overburden communities like we talked about earlier, there are places that we call food deserts, right? They have limited access to food availability. They have limited access to food sovereignty. People aren't making their own food. They're dependent on outside sources for food. And because of that, we have issues where some people don't have access to fresh produce or accessible like food pantries and things of that nature. So in a sustainable community, we're looking at things like providing either equitable supermarkets or maybe community gardens or things of that nature that provide us with this access to food over time like I said earlier, for people today, but also sustain for people in the future. And we also want to provide areas that are going to allow us to have some sort of like economic business kind of ordeal in our communities, right? We don't want these businesses to, like I said earlier, create too much overdevelopment, create too much industrial pressure on our environment. But we do need areas like the small, like mom and the small businesses, the small areas where we are creating enough economic opportunities for people in our community, right? We want there to be jobs for our community members. We want places where people can work safely. We want places where people can go shopping, right? Which is another aspect of that same thing, which is increasing opportunities for business and employment, right? So we want to make sure that these things are in our kind of communities so that we don't have to travel upwards of 15 to 30 minutes in car to go find a place to work at or find a place to shop at, right? We want to make sure that these things are in our communities and we're building them to meet the needs of our people today and making sure that they are sustained for our people in the future, right? So how do we get involved in this kind of stuff? How do we make sure that this stuff kind of gets installed in our communities, right? A lot of what we see with community sustainability is that people have these grand ideas, but they don't always know how to kind of make sure that they are put into their communities. They don't always know where to start. So we have some individual actions, right? So using energy and water efficient appliances is a big one, right? One of the first things that people in the realm of sustainability are going to tell you is turn off the lights when you're not in the room, turn off the sink when you're not using water, things of that nature, right? So we want to make sure that we are using energy and water efficient appliances because they reduce the amount of energy and water that we are using per use, right? So when we talk about things like LED lights, we want to make sure that we're using things of that nature because they create or they use less energy. And in turn, they're using less fossil fuels when the energy is derived from the fossil fuel source, which is reducing the amount of climate change impacts and pollution impacts in the air in the future, right? Same thing with water issues. We don't want to use too much water because the water is coming from a freshwater source. If we use too much of it, it has to get treated. It takes a long time for it to go back into the water, the natural water cycle, which then increases drought issues, increases lack of like water security, things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we're using appliances like Energy Star appliances. We want to make sure we're using things like WaterSense appliances. We want to make sure we're using things that are approved by LEED standards, things of that nature, so that we, as a community, are reducing the amount of energy and water impacts that we are putting on to our environment. Another thing that I touched on a little bit on already, turning off lights when we're not using them. So we want to make sure, like I was saying previously, we're using enough energy to sustain our communities, but we're not using an overabundance of energy. Because when we use that overabundance of energy, we, again, using too much energy, driving fossil fuel sources, creating air pollution, creating climate change impacts, all that kind of stuff, right? We want to make sure we're reducing that. Another big thing that we're talking about in community sustainability, walking, biking, and carpooling, right? So one of the big things with this is that a lot of our pollutants and a lot of our climate change creators or climate change emissions come from transportation, right? So when we drive big trucks, we drive cars, we're doing this all throughout our communities all the time, so we don't really think about it. But these are major drivers of air pollutants, air emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, all this kind of stuff, right? So in order to reduce that, we want to make sure that we're walking and biking and carpooling when we can. So ideally, if we live in a community where we have like complete street programs, which I can go into a little bit later, these are areas where we have access to like sidewalks, we have access to bike paths, we have access to trails that we can walk on to get from point A to point B in our communities without relying on cars and vehicular transportation. So when we're doing things like walking and biking, we are reducing the amount of these kind of GHG emissions, these kind of air pollutant emissions that are going to go into our atmosphere. And if we can't do that kind of stuff, it's always great to carpool when you can. If you and your friends are going to go to a movie, drive together instead of driving by yourself, right? Another thing we're going to look at is creating native lawns. Native lawns are very important and they are very like hit the nail on the head with the description. You're planting plants that are native to your ecosystem, right? Traditionally in our kind of society, we usually go to like the garden store, we pick the prettiest plant, we put it in our gardens, or we put it in our lawns, right? Those plants aren't always native to our ecosystem though, which means that they sometimes need more water. Sometimes they need different amounts of light. Sometimes they need different types of soil that our natural ecosystem provides them with. And because of that, we're using excess water. We're using fertilizers that then cause water quality issues when they like erode and then go into our water system, right? We want to make sure that we're creating our lawns and our gardens with native plants. Another thing that we look into is shopping locally. Like I was saying earlier, you're driving less, you're walking to the store maybe, you're reducing those emissions that you're putting in the air, right? You're also providing economic opportunities for your neighbors, for your community, because you're not shopping with external expenditures, you're shopping within your community, you're keeping that kind of money within your community. And then on top of all of that, we need to make sure that we're staying informed, right? So coming to events like this, super important. You're staying up to date on the most sustainable things you can do. And additionally, you're also going out to different places, learning different things from different people. Maybe somebody in South Jersey knows something that somebody in North Jersey doesn't know. Maybe somebody in New York knows something that somebody from North Jersey doesn't know. So it's good to kind of pick people's brains to kind of figure out what we can do, what other people are doing to make sure that we are helping our communities the best way that we can. So some larger scale things that we can talk about doing, get involved with some advocacy groups. I know that there are different environmental groups all throughout the state, especially in Passaic County. If you guys are interested in those kind of things, look into those. You already have a great environmental commission here. So if you guys want to get involved with them, feel free to do that, right? But any kind of groups that are going to be talking about like environmental issues, social issues that impact the environment, water quality issues, food sovereignty, these are great groups to get involved with. They already know kind of how to get you to get involved in your community. They have some answers for you already. So make sure you're getting involved with them because they kind of have the blueprint for what makes most sense for your communities in particular. Another thing we like to do, kind of like we're doing today, establish educational forums. Make sure you're educating yourself and then educating the public. If you have access to like a library or a business or a school or something, you can give a presentation. You can go talk to people maybe on the weekends. Make sure you're informing people of what they can be doing in your community to help you guys make your community as sustainable as possible. There's also different things like citizen science initiatives. I know the Hackensack River Keeper is a little far from Wayne, not particularly next to you, but they do great things with like monitoring the Hackensack River because the Hackensack River is a major like source of fresh water for a lot of New Jersey, right? So we want to make sure that people are going out and actually monitoring the quality of that water and seeing if there's any runoff coming from like the fertilizers and the industrial plants in that area so that we can kind of help protect that area and help protect our water sources. Another thing like the Passaic River, that's like right next to you guys, right? If people are going to be able to go out there, kind of help out with the citizens like science groups that are in the area already, we can kind of figure out how we can best protect those areas and kind of best protect our green spaces. And with that, another thing that we can talk about is creating green spaces. So if there's areas in your community that you feel like you want to see turned into a trail or a natural park or a nature preserve or something where your community can go and help protect the natural environment, it is within your right. And if you're interested in this, you have the ability to do so. Continue to learn how you can do that. But it's a major kind of impact in making your community as sustainable as possible. And then like we kind of touched on a bunch already, educate each other. If you know something, somebody else might not know that. So it's good to kind of provide them with that knowledge that you now gained. So some resources that might be able to help you guys in your journey for implementing community sustainability in your neighborhoods. My bureau, the Bureau of Sustainability, I'll get into a little bit more of what we do in a little bit, but we have a bunch of resources on different sustainability topics. If you're looking for information, feel free to check those out. Bureau of Climate Change and Clean Energy, they work very closely with my bureau, so I know a lot about them. If you have questions about them, feel free to ask me later. Put questions in the chat. They do a lot of like the climate change assessments for the state. They do a lot of clean energy incentives for the state. They're chock full of like energy engineers and research scientists. So if you want to learn more about climate change in New Jersey and clean energy options for your community and how that can make your community more sustainable, feel free to check them out. DEP's Community Investment and Economic Revitalization Programs sounds exactly like what it is. They're looking to kind of help you create economic opportunities in your community and also make more sustainable options for your community. So anything that you guys are looking into, whether it be grants, whether it be communication with other communities, whether it be intercommunication within your own community, they have people who would be able to help you guys out with that, local government assistance, all that kind of stuff. Blue Acres and Green Acres. I talked to the Environmental Commission about them a little bit the other day. if you guys have questions about them, feel free to ask. They help kind of buy out land in flood-prone areas. Green Acres specifically does like park development. So they have a bunch of information on flooding impacts, the benefits of like green spaces. Feel free to check those guys out if you have any questions or like want to know more about that. And then Sustainable Jersey, we work with them very closely. They have a lot of information on municipal information for how you can get like different grants, different resources and opportunities for different communities, and how you can implement that to make your community more sustainable. They have a bunch of award programs. They have a bunch of points programs. So feel free to check them out. So like I was saying earlier, my bureau specifically, the Bureau of Sustainability, we look to assist individuals, businesses, communities with their sustainability efforts, their sustainability programs. We are split into 3 different units. My unit, the innovation program, we provide education outreach materials. We go to a lot of tabling events. We do a lot of presentations. We help create tools like our plan for sustainability, which is a tool for small businesses to kind of go and learn how to create their own sustainability action plan to help them become more sustainable and save money at the same time. Our small business environmental assistance program, similar stuff. If you're a small business or a medium-sized business and you have some environmental regulations that you need to come into like compliance with at the state level, they'll be able to help you out with that. And our pollution prevention program, very similar to the SB program, they help people reduce the amount of pollution that they're going to be creating in their like manufacturing process. So if you're a business that does any type of manufacturing processes and you're looking to reduce the amount of pollution that you're emitting, feel free to check them out. And then one big thing that I wanted to highlight is my Bureau's Sustainable Business Registry. We're partnering with Sustainable Jersey on this. My Bureau oversees the bulk of it. Sustainable Jersey will be hosting a website for us in the future. The business registry has been in function for about 12 years now. It's a free program. It highlights businesses in the state who are doing sustainable actions. So you need to be doing like 5 sustainable actions. Reach out to me, let me know what you're doing. We'll talk about it, and then we'll get you some recognition for that. It's for any businesses in the state, usually small businesses, nonprofits, or educational institutions. Right now, there are over 200 members. So you join, you become a part of this amazing group of people who are doing sustainable actions. And with your membership, we have close ties together. So we can help you kind of come to different presentations that we're doing. You can speak at presentations. We can give you resources. We can give you information. And we can keep you up to date on a lot of things that we are doing at the state level to help businesses and communities become more sustainable. So with that, just something I wanted everybody to kind of remember as we go along with the day and in the future. It's important that we continue to educate ourselves on things revolving around community sustainability. We want to make sure that we are being as sustainable as possible all the time to make sure that we are meeting the needs of ourselves and our kids and our kids' kids and our future community members, right? So if you have any questions for me, here's our Bureau's email, here's our Bureau's phone number, our department's website and social media pages. Feel free to take a picture of this. If you send an email to that email address, I'll be the one to receive it. So I'll be able to respond to you right away. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or send anything to these information.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Leaf, you want to keep it going?
You want me to just jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Kind of curious if it looks like a couple people were able to use the chat. There should be a button at the bottom of your screen. If you're not on a phone, you can probably access it. And if you click on that button, it should pop up a little sidebar for your chat. And we were asking people earlier to go ahead and throw in where they're from, just kind of doing a poll of who's here from Wayne Township, who's here from other areas. So let's see. Okay, good. Andrew, Wayne Township. Yep, great. Thank you, Wayne. Sometimes it's hard to see that chat box. Lincoln Park. Okay, cool. Great. I was curious if we had anyone outside of Wayne. That's, I think, one of our first. Mona Ornis from Totowa. Maria from Verona. Okay, good. Thank you for doing that. And if you haven't done that yet, feel free to drop that in there. It's nice to kind of have an idea where people are chiming in from. And yeah, you might have missed it at the beginning. Josh gave a bit of an introduction. We just finished up with Stephen Holman from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. He was giving us an overview of sustainability, and we've had several people join in the last few minutes. So I just wanted to say that he gave a great overview of state resources programs for, sustainable communities, the Sustainable Jersey program, different departments within New Jersey government that can help support communities and their sustainability efforts. And I really appreciate what he was saying there at the end as kind of a takeaway is to, I've been saying this also to our environmental commission over the years, is the most important thing for us to do is educate ourselves and become more empowered and connected and networked with the resources that are available to us and the kinds of state and county and town government programs that are already set up. It's great before we tell people that they're doing things wrong, like, oh, like this town, you're doing a bad job on this or that. It's a good idea, I've learned in my sustainability work, to find out first, what are they doing? What have they done? What are they trying to do? What have been the challenges with that? And then see if there's any way that you can, support and offer to contribute to that. So as we continue to educate ourselves, I appreciate that everyone, who's here today is actively involved and engaged in that process. I'm curious, some of you are probably students, some of you are probably professionals. I'd be curious if you're able to put in the chat easily. I know if you're on a phone, it's probably not easy. But put in the chat if you're a student or if you're well, you can just say pro, and that'll, define if we have, people that are kind of still actively in college or are out. Yeah, student, pro, student. Pro. Okay, so it looks like it's about more than half. What do you think, Maria? 75% students? Great. So yeah, I appreciate everyone engaging in this in the chat. It helps us kind of get a sense of the context of the room, the context of the design of this conversation. And so I'm going to go into a little bit of details of some of the things that I've worked on in my career, some of my background, the way I see sustainability. But before I do that, I'd love to hear everyone put in the chat, now that everyone, it looks like, has found how to use it. Go ahead and put in the chat one or two topics of why you came to this call today. Sustainability, obviously, in general, community sustainability. But what's one or two of the topics that is really of interest to you? Because I'd like to, maybe connect that or tie that into some of what we talk about.
And keep it scientific too, and keep it an actual interest.
So, yeah, topics of interest within sustainability. And I'm thinking like, Maria, feel free to jump in, but I'm thinking like water quality, flooding, local energy resilience, community food security, general environmental planning and design. What is there a specific topic, or are you just kind of interested in all of it? You could say all of it if you're new and you don't know specific topics. But this will help us kind of learn not only for tonight and this conversation, but also moving forward. What are people interested in? And the first one, Josh Morris, one of our environmental commissioners, stormwater management. Kamal says to know if this community organizes programs which we can volunteer and make connections to learn and grow. Yes, absolutely, we do. If you're not already on our Wayne Township Environmental Commission mailing list, it would be a good idea to get on that mailing list so you can be aware of our events. Not only our monthly meetings, but we have volunteer opportunities, and there's also some other organizations that we're connected with, like Wayne Grounded and the Certified Growers, Gardeners, and I want to say Certified Gardeners Association of Passaic County, something of that nature. There's all these different organizations that are wanting to work together, that are wanting to make improvements in the environmental health and quality of our township. Of specifically, we're based out of Wayne, but the things we're doing can be used other places. The kinds of activities we're working on, and we're also learning a lot from other communities that are further along in certain areas of their environmental work. So it looks like some of the
And
topics we got coming in. What's that, Maria?
can I add also is just because maybe you may be representing other towns, that doesn't mean I think every commission, every town mostly has an environmental commission that you could assist with. But if you want to start with another commission like ours, or like today with New Jersey Academy of Science, in collaboration with Wayne Environmental Commission, if this is something of interest in you, would like to learn a little bit more? There's always a room that we can make for you if you are enthusiastic individual who would like to learn and contribute to your community or contribute to the community as a whole, at a state level, right? And you could start with us and eventually network to learn a little bit about what we do and maybe contribute to your town, or eventually, here to like today we had Steven works at the state level, and he may have, and not, I don't know about now, but it may be in the future internships that you guys can take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Networking, connecting with other people in the industry, in the field, getting yourself, if you're just starting out, like a lot of you are students, if you're just starting out with your interest in sustainability, I've always said that you first do something for free, then you get paid a little bit to do it, and like, pennies on the hour. And then, eventually, if you are dedicated and committed, you'll have a good career in doing the things that you want to do. And that's true for me. That's, I started out 24, yeah, 25, 6 years ago in college, in Santa Barbara, California, where I studied environmental horticulture science. So for me, sustainability started out in the garden. It started out in understanding how to build a sustainable landscape, really from the ground up, that urban planning, community planning, landscape level, roads, paths, how do buildings interact with the landscape. That to me is kind of the foundation of sustainable design, at least from my approach and my experience. But I started out as a student organizer working for free for the college, right? And I did that for many years, and I proved myself. And we passed all these campaigns, and we wrote grants, and we got like organic food in our cafeteria and renewable energy commitments from our administration and green building commitments, and we created all these. We started composting food scraps from the culinary department into the horticulture garden. We just started to make our campus as sustainable as possible by working not against the administration, but with the administration, working to support them and their efforts. Because I think when we talk about sustainability as community beauty and community resilience and just, healthy living in relationship to the land that provides all our water and food, it's hard to argue with that. If you take sustainability into some other areas, sometimes people might, want to argue with you about, well, is climate change human caused or, natural process? And right, so that you can debate all these topics and the nuances of them. But ultimately, we all want beautiful communities. We all want clean water. We all want healthy, local, secure food, resources. So that's how I started in college. And then shortly thereafter, I was getting paid by the college to run some of their sustainability programs in their newly formed Center for Sustainability. And then after that, I worked for the city of Santa Barbara in recycling and zero waste for 5 years. And I won't give you my full overview of my career, but to current date, I work in an international corporation on the legal team with overseeing North America sustainability compliance. And so my career went from starting out as a student organizer and environmental landscaping to now international corporate sustainability programs. And so that happened for me because, like I said, I was willing to invest in myself, my education, my experience, and to show people that I was passionate and committed to making stuff get done. And I'm trying to do that on the Wayne Environmental Commission, although sometimes things take a lot longer than we had hoped. And sometimes you work for years toward an effort, and a couple people can kind of derail your plans by saying things. But we continue to move forward and continue to work on the efforts and the initiatives that are, not running up against walls. We can't win on everything all the time, although, it'd be nice to. but we do our best. So we're working on a number of things that I'd like to kind of give you an overview of. And before I do that, I want to share a little bit more about my sustainability framework, what I've learned from many of my teachers over the years. And before I get into that and share my screen, I just wanted to say thank you all for who you added topics into the chat. I just wanted to circle back to that. So one person said save energy, another environmental planning, stormwater, community organizing programs, all of it. Yeah. Environmental education outreach, water conservation, air quality, water air quality, renewable energy, climate change, water quality, save energy. Good. So we covered a broad spectrum there. And I appreciate, Stephen covered some of those topics. I hope you didn't miss his presentation. If I know there's still some people still joining, but what I'd like to share is a little bit about what I've learned. Stephen was talking about those three pillars of sustainability, the ecology or environment aspect of sustainability, the economy, and the equity piece. So the planet, the people, and the profit. And so that's kind of your classic triple bottom line of sustainability, as we would call it in when I was in college. And that is a great framework. It often is shown as like these three overlapping circles that creates kind of a Venn diagram. Some people refer to it as the stool of sustainability. And so there's like these three legs, and the sustainable society is a balance of people, planet, and profit. But I've also found that there's in that framework, which is helpful and great, is something that helped me understand sustainability when I was younger. In that framework, it doesn't really highlight the power of the individual. And this kind of ties back to the theme of tonight's presentation, that each one of us really has the ability to transform in whatever way we really want to the community around us and the environment around us, right? There's examples of people who have taken a barren piece of land and over 20 years planted thousands of trees and completely transformed that landscape. And in so doing, they transformed their family and their community as well, because it was such a more beautiful place to live. And so what I've learned over the years is that, yes, we have to be thinking about ecology and the planet, equity and people, economy and purpose, but also the individual, the essence of each one of us, and what's our unique gift and teaching and sort of life story. How are we going to contribute to making change in those other circles? Because those other circles are great at sort of modeling the goal or the task of sustainability. But what about each one of us? Where do we fit into that? And so the way that I teach sustainability, and I have been for about 15 years, is based on this model of those same three spheres that Stephen was talking about, but I just add a fourth sphere at the middle, which is the individual. So each one of you have the power to impact your economy, your community, your people, and the environment. And each one of us every day, by the actions we're choosing, is having ripple effects into our world, constantly interacting and influencing the dynamics of our colleges, our campuses, our corporations. So how we choose to show up is an ongoing way to, like Gandhi said, be the change we wish to see in the world. And so this wheel, this is the sustainability, what I call a holistic sustainability framework that I created about 15 years ago, that is basically the outside circle is the raw elements of the environment. That's nature, right? Everything is in existence because of nature. We would not be here if it wasn't for the earth as our home. And so that's the outside circle. And you can see those raw elements of, on the right, there's a sun, or the fire, the light, the fuel, the water element on the bottom there. On the west is the minerals, and in the north is the air. And by the way, this is totally science-based. This is the four states of matter. This is liquid, solids, gas, and what is often referred to as plasma. So that's the basic environmental kind of outer circle. And this, by the way, is also based on universal indigenous teachings. Everywhere you go around the world, they have this wheel of the four elements embedded, like with these different concentric rings. But in this second circle, what you have is I wish it was labeled a little bit better, but second circle from the outside. So as we move in from the environment is the social community piece, right? There's some things in there that represent like breaking bread with our community, education. There's a book in there, the different ways that we gather around in community, to build trust, to build relationships. And so there's a fireplace in there as like a hearth, a community hearth. And then as we move into that third circle, that's our purpose. That's each one of us and our economy. It could be the economy of a company, it could be the economy of a 1,000-acre ranch. Like I've had clients that are hotel 200-acre hotels, resorts. I've had clients that are ranches, small family farms, big estates in like some of the wealthiest zip codes in California. And this model applies to all of them. You want to get that environmental system dialed in and regenerate nature as best as possible. You want to make sure your human systems are dialed in and that there's good coherence between people and good relationships between people. And then you want to give people purpose and meaning and value, right? Like commerce or a currency of value to provide and a skill, a service to provide. And then at the center of each of all those outer three circles is the individual, and that's each one of you and your mind, your bones, your gut, your digestion, and your brain. So and some people refer to those as the four brains, right? Because the brain, our mind, or our head is a brain, but our gut also has a brain and neurons and stores, memory and things like that. Same is true for our heart. And in some indigenous cultures, some traditional cultures like in Africa, they talk about, getting information or messages from their ancestors through their bones. And they're like, they communicate through their bones. And so this is just representing that as the mineral of you and as the water and the fire and the air that represents each one of us. So we have the ability to change our world and our reality every day by how we interact with not only our thoughts, but the things that we decide to do, the priorities that we make for our life. So just wanted to share that. And then if there's any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into a little bit more of like a big picture sort of community level sustainability. And then yeah, let's check in. Josh, how we doing on time? And let's give me a thumbs up. Let's see. I'm not even sure if I can see people's screens here in this view.
I think you're good. I don't think we've had many questions coming through. If anybody wants to throw them in there, we can answer them at the end. But figure you have, 10 minutes,
Okay,
10, 15 minutes if we don't have any questions.
Great. Yeah. So feel free to throw questions in the chat. I was going to just, ask if this is, thumbs up, if this is making sense and valuable to people. And feel free to give me a thumbs down if you think this is boring. So one of the things that I have tried to do, in addition to my professional career in sustainability, I've tried to take a leadership role in our community to make our Wayne Township more beautiful, to make it have less flooding, have better stormwater management, to try and preserve open space and recreational space and create recreational corridors. Oh, good. I'm getting some thumbs up. Thanks for that confirmation there. So as we apply this sustainability framework and like how do we make change in our daily lives? Well, it all starts with listening to yourself and your interests and your passions so that you can then get motivated and get in, excited and plugged into doing something that brings you meaning and that helps you feel like you're making a positive change. For me, one of those things, like I said, volunteering for the student organization, or actually I co-founded the student organization. But that was for me a way that I could take my anxiety and my fear about what was happening to the world and the environmental problems that we have and just put it into action. Just stop worrying about it and actually just start doing things, anything that I could do to try and make the world a better place. And I guarantee you that if you commit to doing that and you commit to taking a small action every single day, not only will it make you feel better, but you'll be amazed at the progress that you can make over 2 or 3 years. But sometimes, like I learned when I was in college, it took 4 years for us to really get a lot of change to happen at our college. And sometimes like at a municipality, it could take a decade or more to get significant change implemented. And that's my plug for our Wayne Township Master Plan. Not really a plug, but something that is really a great opportunity that has arisen in the recent couple years. So I became the chair of the Wayne Environmental Commission about 3 years ago. Maybe 2 years ago. I was co-chair for a year. But when I became the chair of the Wayne Environmental Commission, the mayor also said, "Hey, we're about to do this master planning progress or process and update the master plan, which hasn't been done in about 30 years." And so the mayor asked, like, does someone from the Environmental Commission want to serve on this master plan steering committee? And so Josh and another one of our members, Vula, and I have all been a part of this master plan process. We've been giving feedback and input and making contributions to ideas about how we can increase, the open space and recreational areas and preserve more native habitat and really do a better job of managing the existing habitat we already have. That's one of the big issues that we're finding in Wayne is Wayne Township owns quite a bit of land, but they don't really have a lot of resources to manage it and maintain it and cut vines off of trees and trim trees. And so things start to kind of look a little bit run down and not so healthy or beautiful. And so one of the best things that we're trying to organize and do as a way to help our community is by doing community cleanups and starting to cut vines off of big native trees that are going to suffocate these trees and cause them to eventually die if they are overgrown. And we are also putting into this master plan different areas of the town that we want to conserve additional open space, because ideally a community like Stephen was mentioning earlier, every aspect of Wayne Township should have, access to parks, should have access to ideally some food and groceries, but even wouldn't it be great if there was a small organic farm in your neighborhood that you could go and you could get some yummy organic fresh grown produce. We could have a handful of small organic farms around the town. So these are some of the things that we're putting into the master plan, as well as trying to connect some of the existing parks, expand and add to them, but then also make like a recreational corridor through the town so that we can get out and move around easier, with all the new development and overdevelopment that's happening, a lot of it to comply with state regulations on affordable housing. We really need to accommodate for this additional influx of occupants, of residents in Wayne. And so one of the things that we as an environmental commission are proposing is that we, create this really incredible, network of basically like walking and biking paths that connect the high schools and the parks and the shopping areas. And that way, we can get around. We would have an alternative to just getting in the car and driving, because right now, as those of you who live in Wayne know, that the sidewalks aren't superb, and there's very little bike paths, and even the ones that we do have are not super safe. So the master plan is a very long range, long-term vision. It's something that is we're inputting and infusing some of our ideas and goals and priorities into that process. But it's also open to the community. And if you don't live in Wayne Township, every town goes through a master planning process. If you haven't looked at your master plan, it's very interesting to look at and understand, because it includes all of these different aspects of creating a sustainable community, like planning and zoning, affordable housing, the boards that review different applications for development. And then specifically the master plan is basically, it's like the vision of where we want the community to go over the next 10, 20, potentially even 30 years. And so as it says here, it's, it includes community facilities, open space, land use, transportation, and utilities. So we are partway into this process, and I just wanted to do a sort of public service announcement that this is still ongoing. There's going to be additional opportunities for community members such as yourself to have input. And so I would save this master plan township, Wayne Township webpage and get yourself engaged in this process. You can check out some of the documents that have already been done. They did several what are called technical memorandums on land use, circulation. There's also an economics one, and this is the list of who's on the master plan steering committee. So let me jump back. Was there any questions or anything when during the last few minutes that we should jump to?
Yeah, there are a few questions we can jump back to. The first one is what are the most effective small changes individuals can make in their daily lives that collectively have a significant impact on community sustainability?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, one of the answers that we often talk about, and yeah, Stephen, you can jump in here for sure as well. But one of the things I often say, because I'm trained in land use design, like environmental design on a big picture scale, and so to answer that question, I would say it depends, because it depends for each person, where you are, not only in the world, like people in India or in Europe might need to do something different. There might be something that's like the best low-hanging fruit for them that's a little different in America. But my 2 cents would be that we can, be shopping local and trying to shop organic. We could be composting food scraps, and we can be trying to support, reducing emissions through solar energy, electric vehicles, and other kind of home electrification appliances and applications.
Leaf, I'd agree with that. One of the things that I found interesting to hear when I was sitting in on a talk from the EPA is that saving food scraps is the biggest thing that you can do as an individual, because that's where a lot of the raw food waste comes from, right? So we don't use fruits, we don't use this. Farmers, if they don't use it, if they don't sell it, if it grows and it doesn't get bought, they fertilize it. It goes back into the system, right? Even to some extent, the producer or the markets will do the same thing, right? They'll find opportunities to get rid of it. A lot of times, as when we in our own personal lives, we end up just throwing the stuff in the trash and it goes into a landfill, which is the last thing you want. So throw it in your backyard, compost it, find a public compost that you can contribute to. But I really believe that is the one thing that we can do. Stephen, this might be better suited for you, but in New Jersey, where are the most challenging places to address food security? I imagine it would probably be, maybe in the west or northwest up in the mountains, or maybe even South Jersey, where kind of in the Pine Barrens. But go ahead.
Yeah. At the state level, we have a lot of people who, one of the big initiatives of the state is to look into environmental justice issues. So we have an office that focuses on environmental justice issues. So if whoever asked that question, feel free to check out that website, because they have a map that shows out like what stressors indicate, like what stressors are impacting certain communities. But to my knowledge, I know Camden is up there. I believe Newark is up there, but Newark is actually doing a pretty good thing with community gardens right now. So they have a lot of community gardens where they're creating like fresh produce and feeding the community that way. I think Phillipsburg is another one. And the Pine Barrens actually isn't a huge issue right now. I would actually say there are maybe more issues down in like Salem County, where you're getting like outside of the Pine Barrens, but a lot of those farms are more private farms, not community-owned farms. So the food gets sent out elsewhere. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's weird being the Garden State, but still having food
yeah.
scarcity issues, and it shows. And from what it sounds like it is this. There's challenges both in rural settings and urban settings, right? So it's not just one problem or one solution. It's more than that for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of it is due to like the industrialization of those kind of companies that got set up in those areas, like North Salem, Canton specifically. the food kind of gets spread out because the spaces where there would usually be food availability is like industrial area. So it's harder to kind of get access to those areas.
So, Stephen, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I guess for all of us right now, here this goes. So we talk about a lot about, availability of source, but what do you have, what is your intake on the new type of, when we think of farmers, we think of farmers with the land and exposed, but let's be realistic, things are changing, right?
Mhm.
And now we have what we call is farming, but the vertical farming, horizontal farming, in which we have
Mhm.
companies in a big indoor space actually growing products. So how
Mhm.
has that changed the economic aspect and sustainability as a whole here in the state of New Jersey? Because I'm even looking here, some part of Wayne has access to that. Newer has a company that does that. So how does have contributed to the economy and contributed to actually as an environmental aspect?
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm sure Leaf being land use development also has something to say about this. But a lot of the major issues that we see with like the agricultural component of um, the economy and sustainability metrics in the state is that when you have large scale industrial agricultural sites, they usually use a lot of land, a lot of water, and create a lot of emissions. So to negate that, I know a lot of people are moving towards things like vertical farming. With vertical farming, you still have the kind of like land that you're creating as like an indoor space instead of like an external outdoor green space. And you also are doing things like importing methane and other natural gases, which also contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a complex like thing to kind of touch on. You would probably need to figure out to what extent is like vertical farming a feasibility for your area. Me individually, not the department, this is an idea of the departments, but I'm always of the opinion of like doing the more community-based gardens, doing the more like sustainable regenerative agriculture is kind of where I would put like my ideas into, as opposed to like um, enclosed inside gardening aspects or agricultural aspects. But I'm sure other people have different ideas about that as well.
Yeah, I would just add that agriculture is a huge opportunity for sequestering carbon in the soil in the place that it's supposed to be. In the place that it has many benefits like increased rainwater absorption, pollution mitigation, filtration, increased nutrient availability, increased microbiology in the soil. Carbon is the basis of humics and humic acids that are the basis of soil life. And the problem with chemical agriculture and throwing a bunch of chemicals on farmland is that it destroys that soil food web and creates a sterile ecosystem where you then have to inject it with your fertilizers. So one of the biggest shifts that we need, as I'm sure Stephen is aware, and others are working on nationally, is a shift from a chemical-based agriculture industry and land management industry to a soil building and carbon storage land management system that completely shifts the paradigm of killing the soil to feeding it things that benefit it. Just like the microbiome of our gut, we don't want to be taking antibiotics all the time and killing off our microbiome. We want to have a healthy microbiome in order to absorb the nutrients that our body needs. The soil is the exact same for the
I
ecosystem, right?
love
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you put it together a little bit of the part of how our body works. And really, right, whenever I think of explaining this to my students, right, that we are our own world. When we think of being in the big Mother Earth, right, we are just a part and we have our own world within that we contribute to the bigger picture. And I love the way you put that. Thank you.
Mm. You're welcome. Yeah, it looks like we had some great chat questions coming to the chat. I wonder, Josh, how much time you think we should go, or should we
I'm
wrap?
willing to hang out and answer a few more of these if everybody wants to. But
Great.
we'll go
Yeah,
another 5, 10 minutes.
great. Yeah, I have some time too. If anybody needs to drop off, obviously, feel free to do so. But yeah, let's check on some of these questions here. How did you stay motivated for over 4 years? I'm not sure if that was for me or someone else, but for me, I just keep trying to pick every single day. I try and pick something that I can do that is going to benefit people or planet. And if I, keep focused on what I can do and I'm grateful for my opportunity to make positive change, then I stay motivated. And I try not to get, spun out in all the problems of our world today that I can't change.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize what you can control and what you can't. Personally, I struggled for a while just because there seems to be sometimes you get overwhelmed by some of the negative news or the negative stories out there. However, I've tried to focus on what I can control, and I can grow and plant trees. That's what I'm good at. That's what I enjoy doing, and those will outlive me. So I think it's important to recognize what can you do that will make an impact into the future, and try not to get bogged down by everything around you, because it's just these little bits piled together that make a difference.
Absolutely.
And
Stephen?
and kind of talk about some of these other questions about how the environmental commission can either measure what we do or support residents, and a lot of it comes down to the municipality, but not just municipality, the county and government, right? So the NJDEP is great. Stephen and many other folk out there will be more than happy to come speak with you, or give you ideas. Um, the county as well. Sometimes some municipalities, as you get smaller, you get into some areas that may not be so interested in tackling these problems, or may have different points of view that just, um, you know, what the residents want and what the government want, those goals may not align. Um, so it's difficult sometimes, but education, getting into education as much as you can.
Hmm.
And that's really, as a commission, what we try to do is, and what we're beginning, this is the first in a number of webinars, and I hope that we continue to educate and kind of spread the word, because once you learn these things, it's not like you can forget it, right? It's in your head, and you kind of got to go through life understanding it now.
I love this question for Steven. I mean, I hope Steven's able to answer this one. This one is very interesting because it's also something that I also would like to see is how is our local infrastructure, and also I'm pretty sure the question will be state level, right? Are prepared for future climate related changes. And the issue here in Jersey, and since we are representing Wayne, we have an issue with flooding, right? So how is our issue in trying flood risk, and how can we work on it? Because Wayne is part of it. We got Newark affected, and we got parts of Patterson that have an issue with that. And let's not talk about the our shorelines, right? Because if everybody loves Jersey, is known for their Jersey Shore. However, our Jersey Shore is getting diminished. So talking all in terms of that and dealing with heat waves. I don't think heat waves are a part. That is, in my personal opinion, it's here to stay. But how we're going to deal with the outcomes of that, and that is a bigger issue. Stephen, what do you think about that in regards to the question? We're trying to answer Reza Waman's question.
Yeah, so these are all tied into what we define as like climate resilience. The state right now has an office. Nick Angeron is the chief of the climate resilience office. They do a lot of great things. They have people in their unit who work in different regions of the state to create different climate resilience plans. So they have a lot of information on that, like what would be more specific to each region as to what we should be doing. In areas like you're saying, like Newark, Wayne, a lot of the issues with the flooding is going to come from the massive inundation of like rainwater, and a lot of like with the Passaic River and like the tributaries going into like the Hudson River, things of that nature. A lot of what needs to be done is create what we call like soft shorelines, or moving away from floodplains. So in different areas where the ecosystem is created to kind of hold a lot of that water, it doesn't always have the opportunity to do so because we have such impervious pavement and impervious surfaces everywhere throughout our urban areas and suburban areas for the most part. So in order to negate those impacts, we could do things like creating green spaces like we talked about earlier, with like trails and different parks and things where those the soil and the vegetation will absorb a lot of that excess water naturally. And then we also have things with like stormwater management issues, right? So the state just put in the new MS4 permits this past year or two. And a lot of it's updating the stormwater like infrastructure in each municipality. But that is a big financial like aspect of the plan. So municipalities need to find ways to gather economic like means to update their stormwater infrastructure. And a lot of that for municipalities who don't have that economic opportunity already is going to come through either federal, state, or county grants. So you're thinking DEP, you're thinking EDA, you're thinking EPA, you're thinking Sustainable Jersey potentially. These are all different grants that we could be getting from outside organizations to kind of help with that management aspect.
And for those interested in kind of the infrastructure and preparing for climate change, in January, the NJDEP amended the REAL rules, right? The Resilient Environments and Landscapes Act. So, that amended many of our either coastal, stormwater, flood hazard, freshwater wetlands. All these rules were amended by the adoption of REAL, the Resilient Environments and Landscapes. So if you have any interest in learning about that, I recommend checking that out.
Yeah, and to speak on that question as well as the next one from Sienna about specifically what do we plan to integrate in Wayne regarding land use and development. So as a part of the master plan, the township is required to do a resiliency risk assessment and include it in the kind of the parks and open space and nature conservation aspect of the design as an element of they have to consider that the fact that the rain is getting more intense, flooding is getting more intense, there's more and more impervious area. From a study we did with Rutgers a few years ago, they showed us that Wayne Township is on the border of going from being just like somewhat of functioning riparian creek habitat. We have like kind of okay, like there's some life, but we're on the verge of tipping into basically just urban drainage systems, right? Systems that have zero life that are basically just, getting the water out of the area so that it doesn't cause flooding. And so what we're trying to do is basically from a watershed approach, look at like how can we protect and conserve the creeks and keep them functioning as ecosystems and then start to like create more parks around those creeks and then to have like developments that are happening around, for example, Barber Pond. Like there's some really great areas over there where we want to try and get some rain gardens put in because there's all this runoff from a parking lot that's then going just through this channel into the pond. And it happens off of the Kmart parking lot. It happens from all directions. It's like, just a bunch of stormwater that goes into these drains and go right into the pond. So if we can break that up, if we can create in the master plan a policy of like, in year 1 to 3, we're gonna, protect the water, the creeks and the watersheds with these, X, Y, Z strategies, right? Make some very specific plans regarding how we're going to protect those watersheds. And then in, year 4, 5, 6, we're going to do these things and have, more rain gardens and green infrastructure higher up in the landscape. So it's a strategic kind of whole systems process, and we're incorporating it into the master plan, some of these ideas and thoughts. But we bump up against all sorts of different issues with just an old school way of thinking about water and water management, that it's a liability and that we got to get rid of it and that we don't want to, try and slow it down or spread it out or sink it in because, we don't want more trees because then the trees are dropping leaves and it's just like this whole mindset of, we have to like dominate and tame nature and put water in pipes and then, create turf grass everywhere. It's just, that whole paradigm has to shift. And so it's a multi-year educational process of working with people in positions of power to help them see that, yeah, there may be some drawbacks to having trees, but they're like this, and then the benefits are like off the chart, and you have to be able to articulate that and inform people and not do it in a combative way where you're, telling them they're evil and doing the wrong thing all the time, because then you don't get anywhere. You have to try and build alliances and work with people as as the Environmental Commission we've been trying to do in Wayne. But it's nothing in life is easy. The best things in life are hard. So do we have another question we want to address?
Can we address two? One of the questions actually was for you, Leaf. And one of them, and I think it's important because we have I think it was Mona, that she's trying to create some sort of sustainability plan, and she needs an idea in terms of how to start a petition. And Mona, can you give us a little bit more information on what do you mean? What plan and where? At the institutional level, at your institution, at your town?
Yeah, well, I can address the question as it's written, but I think that you're right on, Maria. It depends, right? Like I was saying earlier, in integrated design or whole systems design, sustainability, systems thinking, it always depends on the context. Everywhere you go, you don't want to have a cookie cutter, like it has to be this way everywhere. So I would say, well, what's the context of your design? Are you talking, as Maria was saying, about a college? Are you talking about a business? Are you talking about a school? You define that scope of work and like what's the scope of the context that you're working in, and then you do an inventory of needs. What are all the needs and what are all the resources? And then that's the basis. It's oversimplified, but that's the basis of good integrated design for a company or a community or a township, is really like linking these natural needs that we have, for wildlife and stormwater and humans and circulation and right, all these layers we're talking about in the master plan. And you link those needs with resources that we have in terms of space and, funding and people power. We can do a lot by getting people together and getting out there and doing stuff. Whereas, like hiring professionals to come in and do things might be, a little cost prohibitive in certain areas. But then if we get grant funding, right? So it's a process of really assessing the site, the context, and then linking the needs and resources, and a design will emerge from there. All right. Do you want Stephen or Josh, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered everything. It really is very dependent on where you are, like what you're looking to do. One of the things that we have with our bureau is the plan for sustainability that I mentioned earlier, which is creating or helping small businesses create sustainability plans. And with a lot of that, it is more so like what do you need? What resources do you have now? What do you have access to? How many people can you assign to certain roles? So yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
All right. Well, one more question or two more, but then we'll jump off. I mean, it seems like people are enjoying the conversation, so that's great. We can do a few more. I see this one of can you provide a better explanation? This is from Andrew. Better explanation of the transportation side of the Wayne Master Plan. Well, the Wayne Master Plan is in progress. It's still in the community engagement phases, where it has phase 1, 2, and 3 of different community engagement and outreach, where they're doing surveys, they're asking people to come to events. So try and get plugged into that process and make sure they haven't, I don't think they've posted the next meetings, but get yourself into the room, into the conversation, make your voice be heard. That's the first thing. But in terms of the transportation side of it, we've been looking at like the circulation, they did all these traffic studies. So there's a circulation study that was done that shows like what areas of the town have the highest accidents, what areas are the best for walking, where are pedestrians hit, where are cars having a lot of accidents, right? So there's all this kind of circulation mapping. Where are the areas of need, like the schools, that maybe they don't have good sidewalks, but a lot of the sidewalks in Wayne actually have prioritized around schools, which is good. And then in terms of like I don't know if you were asking specifically about the recreational corridor, but basically trying to create areas where people can get off of roads and off of sidewalks where kids are walking a couple feet from cars going 50 miles an hour. If you can get people off of those motorways and into trails, into nature trails, then they have more of a relationship with nature, more of a connection, more of an interest. They want to be a steward of that place and that property. So, getting people off these roads and sidewalks into recreational areas is a good step, but it also gives people, the opportunity, like with all this development that's happening around, I'll use Barber Pond Park as an example. There's several large developments that most of them, for example, the Environmental Commission had no say on a lot of these projects. Sometimes we're criticized for not stopping some of the affordable housing or some of the other developments that are happening. People will criticize us for not doing more, and it's like we don't really have the power to stop these projects, especially the affordable housing ones. We just have the ability to give some comments and to make some suggestions at one step of the process. But specifically, are you pulling something up there,
Yeah, I just wanted,
Josh?
this is the circulation
Show the
plan that,
element.
yeah, this is a circulation memo that was prepared for the master plan. So I'm not going to go through it all, but at least here you can see what was included in the table of contents, what was evaluated. So everything from bike paths to public parking for transit centers, bus service, like Lee said, the accident type, accident hot spots. Um, this is a great example. This is just a few of the things that were talked about.
So, like I was saying earlier, thanks for pulling that up, Josh. So, the process that the master plan is engaged in is a thorough assessment, right? Really getting a thorough inventory of all those needs I was talking about. Whether you're looking at a little backyard garden or a whole entire 50,000 square mile township, or sorry, 50, what is it, 50,000 acres roughly the size of the Wayne Township. But when you're looking at something that scale, it's a very comprehensive list of needs because, it's a whole community of infrastructure that you're supporting. So the idea with this master plan and all the different elements and the studies is to try and give all of us that are involved in that process, as well as the community, a common, sort of framework or foundation of why we're making the design decisions that we're making. And so the outcome of these studies will ultimately be, the master plan, right? A document that's presented and then approved as the vision for Wayne. And so what we're hoping to do in that process is, like I said earlier, add additional parks, potentially preserve some spaces for small scale organic farms in town for food security. We want to create recreational corridors and connection points between different parks that we already have and really, just make sure that because this is kind of the last opportunity, like Wayne is almost built out. Like we're at an opportunity right now where we can put together this vision and try and keep our watersheds still functioning and still having, fish and life in our creeks and our rivers as opposed to just concrete drainages. And as one of our commissioners says, paving paradise, cutting down paradise to put up a parking lot. Pave paradise, put up a parking lot. We want less of that and more trees and green infrastructure and opportunities for the water to be part of the ecosystem before it runs off the landscape, which again is comes up against these sort of different engineering and community design frameworks that take some time to shift. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Leaf.
Yeah.
So I think we'll end it there. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Leaf, for presenting. Thank you, Maria and the New Jersey Academy of Science for helping us schedule this. If you have any questions or want to get more involved with the commission, I'll throw my email into the chat right now while I say goodbye. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and we have our meetings, just to throw in here, we have our meetings every third Tuesday of the month in the mayor's conference room right outside of his office. It's at 7:30 p.m. So if anybody's interested in coming and just listening in, it's open to the public, whether you live in Wayne or not. And we also are the mayor accepts applications for new commissioners. So if people are interested in potentially being a commissioner and being a part of our organization and what we're working on, feel free to come to one or two of our meetings and kind of get an idea of what we do, and then you might want to apply. And there's also many other organizations that are working on trying to kind of heal the landscape of Wayne, protect the ecosystems and the wildlife of Wayne, and make our community a better and healthier place to live for everyone.
And
Awesome.
these members could be college students too, correct?
What's that?
The commissioners could be college students too, a passionate college students that live in Wayne, but we also could have what we call interns from different universities.
Yeah, we have taken internships and helped kind of students who are interested in learning more about kind of municipal government, environmental leadership. We've had some interns in that regard. And then, yeah, we do. The only requirement to be a commissioner is that you live in Wayne and that you're over 18 and you got some time. So, so yeah, reach out to Josh or come to one of our meetings. And thank you again, Maria and Josh, for hosting and organizing, putting the flyer together. And thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us and sharing your knowledge and wisdom and your work you're doing with the state.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.